Hello, Guru, and welcome to the podcast. If you wouldn't mind just giving a little introduction of yourself and your background for the benefit of the listeners and anyone who doesn't know who you are to start, that would be great.
Okay. Hello. Thanks for having me here. My name is Billy Brown. I own Progressive Martial Art Training Systems here in Orlando, Florida. I teach a lot of different styles and systems. Jeet Kune Do and the Filipino martial arts is among them. I also own an organization called Adaptive Combatives, which is strictly the dirty part of a combat. So they're two very different organizations. So that's what I do.
And you're one of those guys who you're kind of like a silent storm, for lack of a better way of putting it. But you've had a lot of real experience with violence, right?
Yeah, unfortunately. I was a doorman, a club doorman. I worked private security sector, and I did some bodyguard work for over a long and painful 20-year period. So I tell everybody that I can't regret that time because it did give me a different outlook on teaching martial arts from an approach that most instructors, I believe, do not have. But I do regret staying in it as long as I did, if that makes sense. I think a decade would have been just as good, you know.
Yeah. So I've seen some of your anti-knife stuff and your different products that you put out, and I noticed you referenced at one point taking a pretty savage cut from a knife and how that kind of informed your practice. You want to tell that story?
Yes. I've been cut 3 times. That's pretty good over 20 years of seeing violence. I mean, hell, some of those years, every night I worked the door, Monday through Sunday. I mean, it was crazy. Keep in mind, I started my career on Bourbon Street. That's where I'm from originally. So I was an 18-year-old kid, already a world-class martial artist, I would say, not boasting, but I was very athletic, very fast. I could jump 10 foot in the air and kick basketball rims. So I thought very highly of myself, if you understand what I'm saying. So when I started working the door, because, see, I opened up my school at 18. So my first school, I opened at 18 in Louisiana. So when I started working the door, the reason why is because I had zero business sense how to run a business at all. I just thought that since I was a talented martial artist, that they would just, flock to my doors, and I wouldn't be able to, keep them out. Well, I was very wrong about that. So to help pay the rent, and I remember my first rent was like $800 a month. That's my electric bill now. You know what I mean? Wow. But even then, I couldn't even pay that. Because I didn't understand I thought it was just a bunch of, the way I was running a business was we would just all get together and spar, So I started working the door to help pay the rent for the school. Well, right away, throwing me out first night, I saw like 3, and I mean, it was horrible, so it really gave me a eye opener very quickly. And it also kind of brought me down a level. But to ask about your cut, the worst one was across my face, from my left ear almost to my eye. And I didn't know that I was cut. I actually thought that I got punched in the ear because for some reason my hearing started just ringing. And so I turn around and the guy just turned white as a sheet. I mean, in my mind, I'm like, well, this guy now knows I'm about to, I'm about to do his ass. So he turns white as a sheet, and he starts backing up, and the other bouncers grabbed him. I ran and hit him like 4 times while they were holding him hard. I was just very upset. One of the bouncers grabs me, and he says, "We have to go to the hospital." And I'm like, "No, he doesn't. He's not ready for the hospital yet. Give me a second." And he goes, "No, you do." And I turn around, and people were actually taking their shirts off, because my blood was squirting all over them. So it ended up being a 39 stitches inside and out. I lost 1 liter of blood. You could see bone, you could see tendon. So that was the scariest one. And if it would have been just a centimeter over, I would have went blind. It would have got my eye. So yeah, that was a crazy one.
And you've taken a couple other different cuts, stabs over the years. Um, for people that don't know, maybe you're not from the United States or you don't know Louisiana and that area. The Big Easy is not easy. It's like one of the most violent areas in the United States, year after year after year after year. So there's some madness that goes on there. I don't know if it's like the voodoo or the
I
alcohol.
think it's a little bit of everything. Cajuns are crazy. Cajuns are crazy. I tell everybody, I say, you know, if it wasn't for the food and the music, I'd never go back. Although I do have some living family left, but yeah, you get what I'm saying. The food and the music is the only thing intriguing about that place.
So you're here and you're kind of like, now you're in this testing ground, working the door, getting stabbed and slashed and all sorts of stuff. Did it change how you practice the martial arts or what martial arts you practice?
Well, immediately it changed. Not necessarily what I practiced, because at that time I was already heavily into JKD. I was already heavily into the Filipino martial arts, into Muay Thai. I was already doing, even by 18, 19 years old, I was already pretty much into all of the, all of the main ones there, so to speak. And but it did show me very quickly. It made me refocus everything. And it made me start to question myself. I would teach something and go, would that really work? Could anybody really make that work the way I'm teaching this? And then what it made me do was take those things that I maybe didn't think would work and put them in the lab and try to find the key to make them work. And if I learn how to make it work, I'd keep it. If not, throw it away and start digging in the rest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so on your training videos and stuff, you still teach some of the trapping progressions and some of the kind of more the things that I guess the MMA crew kind of looks down on. And you didn't just discard that, in light of your experience. Why not?
Well, that's a good question. When I see even an MMA fight, every time I see cohesions met, from clinch range to body locks to even horizontal grappling, it's all trapping. All of it. Every time you can secure a limb so that you can go back to hitting is trapping. What they don't understand is the progression. You gotta have beginning stepping blocks to get to the functional aspect of that. You following me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the progression is what they don't think would work, and they're very right. Somebody's never going to push me and pick up their hand so we could start reference point and then go. It's never going to happen. We know that. We understand that. But if I just go straight to the combatives or to the functional part of that technique, drill, strategy, whatever it is that I'm teaching, that's overwhelming and will scare students away, because that's how I used to teach. When I was working club doors, when I was doing all that, my mindset was strictly combatives. They'd come in and suit up, and we would just go. and I wondered why I wasn't keeping students or wasn't able to pay the bills. It was because people were getting hurt and I was running people off. The reason why that was happening is because I wasn't there for the student then. I was there for myself. Are you following me?
So you think the progressions are for the benefit of the student?
Exactly. The progression is for the benefit of the student, because what the progression does, even stuff that, I made this comment on a forum probably 2 years ago, and I got ate up about it by some people. And then it's funny, like a year later or two, those same people would message and go, I thought about what you said and you're right. Okay. And the comment was, in a real time is life situation, when the excrement hits the oscillator, so to speak, okay, you're only going to use 3 to 5% of what you practice in your dojo. Period.
And that doesn't matter. Anything you practice, right? Anything you practice, you'll probably use 3 to 5%.
And me, at the end of my seeing violence nightly stage or career, I was to the point where I had streamlined that to 2%. I mean, it was every time, and I got to the point the last probably 6 or 7 years, and my wife's here beside me. Say hello, Miss Brittany.
Hi.
But she saw a lot of those because she was the door girl. She was the one collecting money. So she got to see the last 7 years of my career. She got to see violence firsthand also, which is very beneficial to her, I think. But it was the same thing. At the last 6 or 7 years, I was literally knocking out people with one elbow because I streamlined it so much, and I knew that every time I got hurt working these kind of gigs, every time it was because I allowed the fight to go too long. That's the secret to winning. The secret to winning is 2 points: blunt force trauma on the CPU itself, and go first if you can, hit first, and finish fast. That's it.
Very
simple. So all that other stuff that these MMA, like you mentioned, the MMA crews and stuff, they see us doing is purely sharpening that blade. That's it. It's sharpening it. You're not functionalizing it yet. When you functionalize it, all that stuff becomes mute anyway. It's just it's ABCs to the new student is what it is.
So when you're working with new students, have you found, of course, and this is for the benefit of the listener, I already know the answer to this question, but you have found the trapping progressions to be beneficial for them, to kind of like help them walk before they run.
Exactly.
Right?
What it all does is it enhances the coordination, it enhances the tactile sensitivity, it enhances the timing between space. What I mean, like they're how quick can they pick that position up and do the technique? How quick can they receive that data that they need to go? It helps all of that. And then when it gets to the functionalization of the thing, they had already had those stepping stones where this isn't going to be as overwhelming as if I just take them to this and I start with the violence right away and I start with the just simplifying it right away. Yes, we want to simplify everything. Boy, the Jeet Kune Do world, they have fun with that. Jeet Kune Do is simply to simplify. Yeah, but you got to have some hard shit before you can simplify it. You get what I'm saying?
Well, like you said, you have to build the coordination first.
Yes.
It's funny that we're talking about this today, and this is totally happenstance, but Thug Rose just released something on Instagram where she's doing Hubud into wrestling takedown.
With Sifu Greg Nelson. I just seen that. Seen that. Yeah, she trades over there. Sifu Greg is, to me, that guy's a gift to martial arts, all martial arts. So, I just seen that like 10 minutes ago, man. Yep.
The timing couldn't be better for the subject matter.
That's right. And there you go right there talking about Sifu Greg again. He's a world-class MMA trainer of big name people, but yet he still teaches the drill or the exercise area of the stuff too. You get what I'm saying?
Sure. And Lomachenko does a ton of trapping in boxing.
That's right.
Pacquiao flat out does blast punching all the time.
That's it, all the time. You know, so many, and you see a lot of JKD influence in MMA now. John Jones, I'm not a fan of him for on a personal aspect, but he's pure JKD sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he does the oblique kick and closes into the elbows.
The stop kicking, yeah. So
you're going through this back to the beginning. You're going through this progression where you're this talented martial artist, and anybody who is not aware of who you are, just watch some highlight reel footage of Guru on YouTube. The guy could probably still kick the rim of a basketball hoop. And he's a big guy. He's not some little skinny dude. He's a big guy that can move. Yeah. So this evolution kind of starts to take place, and you're on the door, which is an incredible. You use the word laboratory, which I think is a great.
That's what it was. It was a lab. Right? It really was.
And then you're bringing it back to your school, and you're just basically initially kind of handing out beatings in the school, and this light bulb comes on. You're like, wait a minute, I got 3 students or whatever. This isn't working. And you go back and you kind of reverse engineer.
I'm gonna tell you what changed everything. What changed everything is in 2002, I first met Guru Dan Osano. And the way he interacted with people have you ever trained with Guru Dan?
I haven't. I've trained with some of his students,
Okay.
but
The way he interacts and the way he teaches, it's like you're getting a history lesson, you're getting a math lesson, you're getting I learned so much that I thought I already knew that he blew me away. And I'm like, this is what my students need. They need education before violence. So that was the turning point. That was 2002. So I'd already been working the door since I was 18. You see?
so what kind of time frame was that?
So let's see. I'd already been working the door almost 5 years.
Okay.
So I'd already had seen enough violence to understand what violence. I hadn't yet become the master of violence, so to speak. What I mean by that is I don't mean wrecking stuff. I mean being able to coexist in the midst of it. That's what I call mastering violence. When you're able to coexist in the middle of it. Fear doesn't stop you. All of the chemical reactions that our body goes through once the threat response hits in doesn't stop you, because those two alone I've seen those two shut down world-class MMA fighters. I'm talking about people you would know if I mentioned their name. Shut them down in real violence. Shut them down. So they didn't quite understand yet how to coexist in the midst of it. Coexist in the midst of it doesn't mean you're just knocking everybody out. It means that you get out with the least amount of damage as possible. So whenever I say mastering violence, that's what I mean. I don't mean like you're Billy Jack going in there. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'd already seen that. But that young buck in me was still wanting more. I'm not gonna lie to you. There was a time span where I got very addicted to it. I knew that it was making me better. I knew that it was. I knew that it was giving me the different approach, so I could share back with my students, so they could understand it without going through it. I knew all that, but you should never want it, and I started to want that a little bit. In the last probably 7, 8, 9 years, I wanted out, but I was working for a man who I considered a friend at the time, and he had the biggest club in the town. I had worked for him since the 90s. I had worked for him in Tennessee, so I had known this man a very long time. So out of obligation, I kept doing it, and he ended up screwing a bunch of people over anyway. I wish I would have got out, but you get my point. So I just I just did it and I didn't want to do it. And there was times in those periods where I got hurt knowing the night we went in. Like I would look at Brittany, my wife, and go, I don't think we should go in tonight. And she knows that when I say that, she knows to go, well, you're probably right then. Because I usually got that little intuition thing, but I go, no, I promised them I'd be there to run the team. Let's go. And then I'd end up getting hurt. The last 10 years, man, 2010, I got hurt so bad, it nearly ended my career. Yeah. It nearly ended my career. The doctor said that I would never walk again. Yep. Yeah.
Wow. So, and
I'm
you're
kicking people in the head. Yeah. And
so what injury did you receive?
Well, let's tell the story, if that's okay. We got time still?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was working a spot, a huge college area, huge MMA, huge football college area, and a huge cocaine area. Okay, like that's like you can get that, like they'll just give it out for free sometimes in this area. Okay. So my wife just said true, because the whole club, you got 400 people coked out of their mind, man. You ever witnessed that? So the night it was pouring down rain, we were on a deck, but the deck had a roof, but the rain was just still coming into the roof, and we had just painted the deck probably the day or 2 days before. So it got so slippery where people were literally falling all night long. Well, at the end of the night, some guy ripped a bottle out of a young girl's mouth and broke her 2 front teeth when he ripped it out. So I instinctively just did I was right next to him when it happened. And I just hit him with an elbow. I didn't say a word. I just hit him with an elbow, and he like vanished. I didn't see him the rest of the night. I don't know, because as soon as I hit him, his 4 friends jumped me. And when I hit this guy in a freak accident, my right leg slipped on that deck, and I ripped my rectus femoris in half. Quad, yeah, the biggest muscle in your leg. I ripped it in half. It rolled 7 inches up, and I was in the most pain in my life. Well, they didn't know that. They thought I just slipped, and like, we're going to get this big badass. You know, they thought that they had me. And so they're punching me. One of them is kneeling behind me trying to get a rear naked choke on me. Thank God he had no clue what he was doing, or he would have succeeded in putting me unconscious, because I was trying to defend these punches from these other guys. And the girl that got her teeth ripped out, she's under it all screaming. So it was just so, with the pain and the chaos and the how loud it was just crazy trying to formulate what the hell I'm going to do next, right? So I knew that something was wrong with my leg, although I will say I thought it was my knee for some reason. I had no clue it was the quad. So within just a last minute thing, I'm like, I got to stop these punches and we got to go to the hospital. And all this happened within probably 6, 7, 8 seconds. But I had an Emerson folder with a wave lock. Should I tell this? I had an Emerson folder with a wave lock, and I engaged it. And I just remember thinking, the next punch that comes in, I'm just going to run it through. And I ran the guy's hand through. It went through his it was perfect, not due to my accuracy under that, but it was just perfect luck for me that I hit the web of his thumb, and it went completely through. He passes out like a little baby, and because it was so, he was so drunk, and everybody was so drunk, his blood was so thin that the blood from that little thumb mixed in with the water on the deck, and it looked like a freaking crime scene. It looked like 3 people's been murdered. It was just so thin. Well, the friends never seen the blade. I did it so. It was I thought I really didn't know what was going on. I tuned in tunnel vision that next punch, and I ran it through. It was perfect. And they thought I gutted the kid because he passed out. He fell on the ground after he looked at his hand. And they thought I gutted him. And they all ran. So the knife ended the fight completely. The next day, should I go into all these details? Look, we're going to do it. Let's just put it out there because it's in a book anyway that I'm writing. So the next day.
Right on.
So, okay, it was a college area. It was a college town. So the college kids, they get like a text message whenever stuff happens. They all got a text message. Nobody knew nobody knew the facts of anything. They just knew that somebody got stabbed at a bar. So the text message read this. Okay, here you go. This is what the text message read. Black male, plaid hoodie, white S10. This is me. White male, black jacket, black Eclipse. So they never. So when I got this, I called to the police department, and all those guys knew me at the time. I was training half of them. And
oh, thank God.
They come to my school the next day. My leg is it looks like 3 legs. It's completely swollen and completely purple because what happened when the rectus femoris tore, it bled into my calf, and the calf turned black. It was the craziest thing that I've ever seen. So they came, and within about 10 minutes, they ruled it self-defense on my part. They viewed the video camera. I mean, they seen, they seen what it was. And, they asked one question, why did you leave the scene? And I pointed to my leg. They go, got it. So, yeah. Right. Yeah.
Wow. So just in case anyone up to this point was questioning your credibility with violence and knives and all that sort of stuff,
that's it.
There you
Violence
go.
is very unpredictable. One of my mentor, really, Grandmaster Brad Whitlow, he told me one day years ago. I've been with him for almost 30 years, this man. But I was probably 18 when he told me this, 17. He said that You have to be a chameleon when you talk about violence, because you have to be able to adapt and change colors as the chaos changes. And that was a very true statement that I followed. You got to change colors with it. It means that, it means adapt. And that's the whole reason why I coined, or I started naming my organization Adaptive Combatives. And the chameleon is actually our mascot, you know. But it's just, you have to change colors as the fight changes, because a fight can mutate very quickly. 1 minute you're fighting one guy, you think you got him. Next minute you get hit in the back of the head with a bottle. Now, if it didn't drop you and stop you, now you have to engage 2 or 3 people. You have to just be able to do it on the midstream.
So as Seagung Bruce would say, be like water.
Water never stops at a rock. It thinks about the next direction. It just takes it.
What do you think about this? Because, there's this whole debate in the martial arts community, and you got guys like, and I'm going to murder this guy's name. I have no idea how to pronounce it. Zhu Xiaodong, the guy, the Chinese MMA guy that's just walking around handing out beatings to all the traditional martial arts people. Do you think that that's a fault of traditional martial arts? And if so, why or why not?
That's a fault as in they're losing? What do you mean?
Yeah, you think they're losing because traditional martial arts are bad?
Not at all. I probably respect traditional martial arts more than I do the more eclectic stuff in some cases, because it's never about the art or system. It's about the person. Real violence is very, very mental game. And when I talk about like the last 7 years of my boxing career, I was knocking people out with one elbow. That's not bragging. That only means that I started to understand the game. And I knew that there's a high possibility that if I don't drop this guy within 3 to 6 seconds, I'm going to get injured. I understood that right away. And I understood that even though I'm good at the violence, I got good through conditioning, not because I wanted to. I got good because I had to. And even though I'm good at it, I'm still human and I will get hurt. So I understood the game, and I understood, well, there's also a high possibility that if I drop you right away, even if you're with multiple people, that if I drop you right away with the animalistic intention that I'm known for, your friends probably won't want none. And that worked most of the time. So going back to the traditional martial arts, it's not that it wouldn't work. A front kick to the balls is a front kick to the balls. A punch to the face is a punch to the face. An eye jab is an eye jab. I stick your finger in your eye. Anybody can do that. We all have the fingers, okay? So it's really not that different. What the point is, they never once dissected it and researched how real chaos happens so that they can learn how to plug in their style of system when that chaos happens. They've never once researched it. Because you automatically think that people automatically think that their art or respective system has all of the answers to all of the combative questions that it could be asked and will be asked. People automatically think that out of pride. So I think that it's more of a mental thing than will traditional arts work. Sure, it will. I know pioneers of the art of Taekwondo. I've been in the art for 30 years, and my mentor is a 9th degree black belt in Taekwondo. And he will take his boot to this day at 63 years old and put it wherever he wants on your body, effortlessly. No, he will. So it's not about the traditional art. It's about people understanding how to make it functional.
Yep. So you got guys out there, and this is a tiresome debate for me too, because like I started in Aikido, which gets all kinds of flack. Right?
Even though I've trained Aikido also for probably 25 years.
And I know guys who will literally just drop you on your head. No matter what you throw at them, they'll drop you on your head 100% of the time, because they know they've used it for real, right?
That's right.
And then I went to high school, and I went into this like little basement sparring league that I started with my friends, and all my friends were Taekwondo black belts, and I got handled by them too. And you know, you get this silly, I guess, debate that goes on in the martial arts, and you and I both know it's mostly just keyboard warriors
Yeah.
starting stuff on Facebook or whatever. But here you are, this guy who, and I've, you know, I've been a fan for a while. This is,
Oh, thank you, sir.
the podcast is new, but I've been following your work for probably 4 years.
Oh, wow. Very awesome. Thank you.
Sure, and I'm a full instructor under Paul Vunak.
I did see that. I was going to talk to you about that. That's awesome. Paul was a big changing point in me. He, even though every time I get an interview, they ask me about how much time I spent with Paul, and they get shocked when I say I've never met him personally, but we used to talk on the phone, and even that, and this was the 90s. This was right. Okay, thanks to Paul, when I started working club doors, I was 18 years old, and that's exactly the same year that I found out who Paul was, and I got all of his videotapes, and I just started studying it, and I'm like, this guy's mindset is what I'm looking for.
Right.
Because of him, he was the first one to make me change my mindset, and he gave me some. And he probably still doesn't know this, and he just commented on a post I posted the other day. It's so funny, but he doesn't even know this, but he gave me some of the best advice. One time, I'm going to tell you this. One time I called him. We had just done a class, and my students were getting cut with it. I bought some cheap helmets. I don't even remember. This was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But I bought some cheap helmets, and they were, when we would do the straight blast, they were either cutting their fingers or they were cutting their heads when they did the headbutts. Not bad, but just scrapes. You follow me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that couldn't last, you know. And I'm like, you know what? We got to fix this. So I called Paul up, and I didn't realize that it was in Cali. It's the time I was in Louisiana at the time. The time difference was probably, I don't know, 6 to 8 hour difference, 6 hour difference or something, right? So I call him up, and I could tell he was doing something. And I call him up, and I go, "Hey, Sifu, Billy Brown," and we had already talked on the phone a couple other times. I got a quick question. I go, my students are cutting their head, their limbs on the helmets some. And I said, what helmets do you, I said, they're bleeding and stuff. I said, we got to change the helmets. I said, what helmets do you recommend? You know what he told me?
Motorcycle helmets.
A little blood is good for the soul, bro. So I said, yes, sir, Sifu. I hope you had a good night. So I told my students, a little blood's good for the soul. Yep.
It was the same thing for me, right? Like when I was getting handled by these Taekwondo black belts and all these other people, it wasn't until I started doing limb destructions and stuff that things kind of started changing directions for me against people that were a lot better than I was, right? And then it was how he kind of simplified things down to a couple of tools. I think that it was like 10 tools to win a street fight or whatever. And so I hear you saying the same thing. You're working, you know, it seems like the journey is similar. You're working the door, and you start with this big toolbox, you know, or a truck full of snap-on tools or whatever. And then you wind up narrowing it down to a handful of techniques. You want to talk just a little bit about what you found that actually works and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's really the core of what we're talking about. What are some, and it's much more about, it's not about techniques. That's what everybody gets so hung up on still. And I really love Bruce Lee's philosophy of how when he always said simply to simplify, you know, some clans of Jeet Kune Do think that means just you should only do one or two things. He just meant find how to strip it down to the core and simplify everything. Right. Not just techniques either, but strategies. The firstest with the mostest is the bestest. First time I heard Paul say that on a video was probably 1997, you know, and that stuck with me so much. It's one of the core beliefs in my system and in my mind, because I made it work so much, is that Once you receive the ABC, ABC is what we call attack behavioral cues from the attacker. If you've trained to recognize that, because we all have it in us, we all know when a threat is there, whether it be an animal, we all can feel it, but people have deprogrammed themselves, so to speak, over the years because they stick their heads in their phones while they walk down a busy street all the time. So they kind of turn those survival mechanisms off. But if you keep those things on, you can read intention. People can read intention. Why? Because energy is transferable. Mm-hmm. Feel energy off of a person. If you know, how many times have we talked to someone on the phone and 30 minutes into the, well, I don't talk for 30 minutes to nobody on the phone, but a few minutes into the phone conversation, you just stop and you go, what's wrong with you? And then they break down and tell you what horrible is going on in their life. How did you know through phone line 600 miles away that something was wrong? You knew because energy is transferable. So when you have those things turned on and you recognize that, look, I cannot just leave. I cannot just walk away. My family's here. My 3-year-old daughter can't run as fast as me, or I'm in my house and this happens. You just have to go first. You got to pull trigger immediately. That's one of the things that's made me as successful as I was. It's because I hit him first.
Yeah, Jeff Thompson talks a lot about that.
He does. And when you look at people who have spent time on club doors, you look at Lee Morrison, look at Jeff Thompson, look at all these people, Kelly McCann, although he has a huge resume, but Kelly McCann is a good one. All of these people, we got to all get the same. We may do stuff differently, but we all get to the same point. Does that make sense? The main point is we know now because nobody ever talks about their defeats or their injuries or the pain that they sustain or the injuries they say. Nobody wants to talk about those. I do. I want people to know that violence is ugly, and I want people to know that even if you sustain these injuries, that you have to learn to fight through them until you're safe, and not just let the injury shut you down. And allow worse things to happen, so to speak.
So give an example. You keep talking about an elbow, knocking people out with an elbow.
So I teach the elbows two ways. There's multiple ways to throw an elbow. I teach two different striking areas with the elbow, and I learned this through doing it because I've probably knocked out 100 people with it over the last 20 years. So. Most people think an elbow doesn't have knockout capability because the elbow is designed to cut. Yes, in a sport arena, it's designed to cut, and it will do beautiful with that. Well, mine won't because mine's in pieces right now, but I can actually move the chips in my elbow. But my right elbow anyway. But yes, elbows cut the face. But if you put your middle finger to the tip of your elbow and you put your thumb about 3 to 4 inches, that striking surface is for knockouts. That hits harder than any fist will. And you have your bone, you have your tricep, your bicep, your shoulders, and your back behind it. And it's in my experience, it hits harder than anything I got other than a spin side kick, which I'm not going to throw in a street fight.
What's your target?
Jaw. Yeah,
the jaw.
I hit him in the jaw. Yeah, and now I've dropped him in the head also. But anything to shake the CPU. That's why the attachment's so important. And you're a VU student. You're going to follow this. The attachment's so important. I stress to very rarely teach the headbutt or the elbow when you're not clinching them in, because when you're clinching the neck, when you clinch the head like we do in Muay Thai, that's to control the head. When you clinch high up top, that's to control the head for head knees, to shook him off to the left or to the right. That's the moving. That controls the head. But when you teach the clinch to the neck, see, that controls the body but not the head. I don't want to control his head. I want his head to be trying to get away from me so I can hit him. You follow me? So when you clinch the neck, you control the body. So I don't ever stress the headbutt or elbow without the clinch, because you can also control your targeting area. Does that make sense? If I'm clinching the neck and I move him a little bit to the left, that took his skull out of the path or trajectory of my own skull. Does that make sense? That's going to allow me to hit the jaw or the nose like I want to hit properly in a downward or a 45-degree angle motion. Yeah.
Have you looked at all at Dave LeDuc?
A little bit. I need to refresh on him though. I'm not.
So he does Lithway, which is like Muay Thai headbutts, right? And they clinch differently in Lithway because of the use of the headbutt. I've adapted my whole clinch game to the way they clinch because it sets up headbutts and stuff so much better than the Muay Thai clinch.
That's awesome. But I think that the clinch was my safe land. It got to be my safe land because I knew that if I clinched the person, I could control him at least somewhat so that I could hit him in ways that I knew he didn't train to defend. You know, so So the clinch,
that's the whole formula.
Yeah. So the clinch became my safe. Like I would always stress, get to the clinch. Now the straight blast I took out because no. Let me rephrase that. The straight blast is still very much in my system. But I changed my formula than Paul's. Paul's was the interceptor, the destruction, straight blast, termination, right? Because every 20 years, I was literally probably, when I tell this to people, sometimes it's unbelievable. Then my wife looks and goes, dude, I probably saw 50 or 70 of those in the 7 years she worked doors with me. But I was probably in 200 or more altercations. What does altercation mean? I don't mean like all out, balls to the wall. I mean like if I got to put hands on you to escort you out, that's an altercation. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So about 200-300 of those. It was some nights I literally worked every night. I got addicted to it, which you should never do. I tell every one of my bouncers that have worked under me or was trained by me, never get addicted to this. And it got to the point where I was firing people left and right, and my wife's shaking her head right here because they got addicted to it. I mean, I had one bouncer literally, and we're not going to mention names or nothing or spots, but he literally, a 68-year-old man, he tripped outside, stomped his head in. So because he lost it. He lost his control because the guy was drunk and he needed to go home, and we should have got him a cab, and I wasn't by it. So luckily the guy wasn't badly hurt, but you get my point. These guys get so addicted to it that they lose their reasoning. So because yeah.
So if you were to formalize it, where does the straight blast go in your formula?
The straight blast goes a couple different places. For one, if I lose the forward my forward motion, because forward motion, run them into something. That's a big part of what I do. If I lose that, be it my trip, in a chair, I couldn't engage it quick enough. I couldn't hit that turbo switch fast enough. If you lose the gap or the set point, if you lose that, that's where the straight blast comes in, so you can regain the ground. Does that make sense?
So similar to how Pacquiao uses it in boxing.
Exactly. And I've used it. Yeah, I've used it. Okay. The wife, you mentioned her. She witnessed one. One was I was trying to take a guy out of the bathroom. In the bathroom was it had like 3 urinals and 2 walk-ins. Well, he was at a urinal. I waited till he did his business, and there was a wall that went in that separated. So he was behind the brick wall, and he threw at me right there, and I just moved because the brick wall. So I had to. He threw at me. I backed up away from the wall. He came around the wall, and the door was right there behind him. And he launched like 3 shots. I couldn't get attachment. I couldn't clinch his neck. So I just covered up, boom, boom, boom. Then I launched it, and it backed him through. It backed him through the bathroom, through the hall, into the women's. That's when I got attachment. So the straight blast is good for that, but most of the time the fight is going to be started face to face. Where the straight blast is out, it's you don't have the range, the luxury of space to do that.
Right, the range.
That's right.
Prohibits.
So just clinch him and go. Yeah.
Right on. And you talked about we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but hopefully people can keep up. You talked a little bit about reading people's energy even through a phone. I think, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think that's another benefit of the energy drills and the trapping drills, if you will, is it sensitizes your body to reading people's energy. Would you agree with that?
All of those things is to help sharpen the blade, and the blade doesn't have to be physical tools. In real altercations, man, the mental, that's what most instructors miss, because the mental, they don't teach any aspect of it. They want to give you all these tools, to teach you all these strategies, and some of these guys have great concepts. I mean, some of them I'm like, good job, that would work, but they're missing the mental game. They don't tell the students about the chemical reactions that's going to be going on once you're in that, time is life situation. They don't tell the students about, the aftermath. Even the last fight could be the legal, the legal fight. I was very, very fortunate in my career to only have that happen a very couple times, and each time it was in my favor. So I was very lucky, but some guys are not. I know bouncers that are still in jail. So yeah, they don't tell people any of that,
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You want to break down the mental aspects for the listeners so that they can
understand of course. One of the biggest things that happens in the human body when we're under any kind of threat stimulus is the adrenal dump. And what people don't understand is that the adrenal dump is actually, built in us for our favor. It's actually it's a source of power that's built into us for our favor. But if people don't understand that and understand how to use it properly, it shuts you down, because it injects so much of this energy into you, so to speak. Not trying to sound like a Zen monk or nothing, but it injects so much of this energy into you that it will literally stop fighters, trained individuals, from doing what they need to do. Guys that are in a cage every weekend, they get on the street. I've seen it time and time again. I have knocked out more world-class MMA fighters. Working my last decade in a college town, a huge college, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, was the last decade that I worked. And if you have MTSU there, which is a huge college, and you have an MMA school. I also had my school there, by the way, for 15 years. Well, no, 13 years. I had my school there, all 14 years, something like that. So anyway, so I still worked the doors through that. Even though I had a successful school, I still did it because I don't know. What I said about getting addicted to it. You kind of don't want to leave. Yeah. You kind of want to, and this is what I tell everybody now when I talk to bouncers. When I teach bouncers a lesson or a course, I tell them all, I'm like, when you get addicted to it, you should take a break. You should just take a break and do something else. In some of these spots you fight every night. Some of these college spots you fight every night. We literally, when we open I'm not going to mention the name of the spot, but everybody you listen to this knows already knows me, but that all my Tennessee people. But when we open the spot, we literally was at capacity every night for the first 2 years, and capacity was 647 people. That's how big the spot was. We literally had the fire marshal shut us down every week at least once. Yeah. So, and most of them are college kids. And everybody, by that time period, what year did we open? Let me think of the I'm thinking of the path of fight shirts. You started with Tap Out, then the next then Affliction hit, and then American Fighters now is the big one. Everybody, you see a 20-pound guy over here wearing an American Fighter shirt, walking around like he's an American Fighter, and so yeah, everybody in Murfreesboro has a Tap Out shirt or an Affliction shirt or an American Fighter shirt. They all wear it, and they all at least have pay-per-view. Okay, so they all think they're MMA fighters, and but it also changed a lot with the way I was approaching things, because MMA alone, man, I'm getting off point a little bit, but MMA alone changed everything for bouncers, everything. And this is
Sure,
why,
sure.
because in the
Yeah.
beginning we were handling tough drunks. Now we're handling tough drunks that have at least seen elbows and leg kicks 100 times on TV.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's fight IQ went up a little
So
bit.
it changed everything, because now the great possibility of getting in an altercation with someone who is trained rose very quickly. And we did. We started to a lot. World-class people who were just drunk, and wanted to prove themselves out there in the street. And a lot of them got hurt and sent to the hospital.
Yeah. Mm. All right, so we're at the adrenaline dump stage, and you just said adrenaline is a tool, right? Which it is, right? It's in our body to help us.
And the problem with adrenaline
fights.
is that in a time of life situation, it's always met with cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So when you mix those two, your body starts asking you questions. Do I engage? Do I just freeze here and hope they don't see me, or do I get the hell out? So your body's asking you questions. Mm-hmm. Well, this is what happens, and can go back to the traditional martial arts question also, why some of those guys can't make it work. It's because what happens here is that your body in a time of life situation starts asking you questions, and you have to formulate, first off, PI-FI, P-A-F-I, PI-FI. You perceive the threat. You analyze the threat. Make sure the threat's a threat. Okay. F, you formulate an attack plan. And I, you initiate motor skill. PI-FI, perceive, analyze, formulate, initiate. Well, this is the fighter's model here of how men and women register data in combat or in a time of life situation. The problem is you have to focus on all four of those within a nanosecond. Does that make sense? Untrained person, those four things could take minutes to get through. That's why they freeze, because their body is still trying to answer questions that their mind cannot ask yet. You follow me? A trained person, when I mean trained, I don't mean gym trained, I mean violence trained. Either you've been through it, you've seen it, you understand a little. Even if you understand, if you haven't never even seen it, you had better put in the hours researching what it is. Those people can go through these four with laser-like speed. That's the key to making it work. If you can answer those questions and engage or figure out what to do with each, like for example, PI-FI, you perceive the threat. You analyze the threat. You may perceive the threat, turn around and analyze the threat, and it's your mom that snuck up on you. You're about to rake her eyes and headbutt her. You get what I'm saying? So you have to, each one of those four questions you have to solve before you could realize what to do next.
And how do you teach that? Is it just through drilling?
Yes, drilling is very important, but it's also, I don't hold back with my students. I want them to, I don't want them to seek the knowledge the way I did. I don't wish that on anyone. In fact, two things. I still get emails from world famous clubs. Heck, I'm getting them here in Florida now, and I've lived here for 10 months, and I'm getting them here in Florida for people wanting me to come to work. And I will never do it again. Unless it's like I'll do maybe, a gig like for a, show with a famous person or something, but I'll never work every night again, So I don't want them to do that. What I do want them to do is I use this term, I want you to become a student of violence. And what I mean by that is you need to educate yourself with every aspect of it, so that if you are ever forced to answer that question, you will at least have seen it, so that you can at least have a few ways to answer it, hopefully. Does that make sense? People are scared to read. People are scared to become a violence expert. And that has nothing to do with physical. People are scared to study it. People are scared to watch videos on it. I could get a room, and I've done it. I've taught a room full of world-class MMA up-and-comers. And afterwards, some of them stay for my combatives portion. Some of them leave. And after the class, they'll come up to me and they go, I've never knew that with the stuff you told us was even a possibility. Like I never knew that your leg could get tore in an altercation, 4 guys on you, beating you down when you're in the most pain that you've ever experienced in your life, and you had to use a knife to hit a hand, and that stopped the fight, and you didn't go to jail. You get what I'm saying? They never know that area.
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
we just think we're going to toe up and get in our steads, maybe even take our – we saw a fight the other day here in Florida. See them all the time. Guy just took his shirt off first like that. Why did you do that? And then he got in his stead, started bouncing around like a boxer, you know? Yeah. So, you know, opening these people – I think, listen, if you are sport-focused, that's awesome. I think these athletes today are amazing. I love watching it. But you should very, very much consider incorporating at least a little bit of your time, even if it's one day a week, to the combatives reality side of things too.
So what does that look like? If you say you got a guy who he's an amateur MMA guy, he comes to you to learn the combatives side of things, how would you train that individual?
We do have a lot of those actually. And the first thing I do is I know most times, a lot of times we come in and they tell me that they're an amateur MMA fighter, and the only thing they really have to show for it is that American Fighter t-shirt. But yeah, but when they come in, a lot of times I know that I don't have to work on their conditioning. I know that I don't have to work as much on their coordination, because if you're an amateur MMA fighter, you should at least have the building. And I say this, but I'm shocked by how many do not have just the basic coordination understanding, you know. And but that may be due to trainers. I don't even know, you know. But I've had guys come in with MMA records that have done pretty well, but then you get them on the mitts and they barely know how to throw a proper jab. You get what I'm saying? So, but most of the time, I know that I don't have to work. So what I have to do is I have to take the tools, and usually I find out what they train, because you got MMA fighters that call themselves MMA fighters, but they know a jab, they know a cross, they got a good low tie kick, and they know a double leg. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Back in the day when I started training, and I don't know, how long have you been training?
Man, since the late 80s.
I started training with my father in 1984, so we go back about the same amount of distance. I was a kid,
about the same amount of time.
So through all of that, what I've learned is that each decade brings a different issue, so to speak, to the table when you're talking about the bouncing work. Okay, and today people will come in.
Right.
And back then, it was when you were a mixed martial artist, it was because you were actually delving in and learning a new art. You were learning it. Now, to be a mixed martial artist, you can have a little mediocre boxing, a little mediocre Muay Thai, and a little mediocre wrestling, and a little mediocre BJJ, and you're all of a sudden a mixed martial artist.
Yeah, the old school mixed martial art is like a Dan Inosanto, a guy like.
That's it. And then not only that, at the end of it, and this is why Paul was so important, Uncle Vic. This is why he was so important. You want to be like Dan in that way, and I believe that. I believe that a good instructor should be the king of his product. Does that make sense? You should know it in and out. You know, if a student asks the Cantonese name for this, I should know it. If a student wants to know if I know anything about, I don't know, capoeira, I should at least be able to answer something, because the martial arts, and being that a teacher, you should study your craft in depth. Does that make sense? Dan showed me that. Guro Dan showed me that. He made me see that it was so much more than the fighting. Thank God he did, because I was getting to that dark side already. I already said I was 4 to 5 years in, and I was going to that dark side. And there are years where I don't remember. Now, that's the truth, because I got so involved in the work that it was all almost autopilot. Does that make sense? And I don't believe that's good either.
Wow.
You know? So if an MMA guy
Right.
comes in to answer the question, I'm talking a lot today, but I find out what he's good at, and then I strip it down, and I start explaining to him what violence is really about. And most of the times, that right there is an eye opener for them. They all say they've been in street fights, and then I start asking them, well, yeah, man, in high school, I don't want to hear about your high school soccer field fights. You get what I'm saying? Have you ever been in a real altercation with someone who literally, if he could, would grab a tire iron and beat you to death? And they, of course, 99% of them say no. Now, we do have a huge military following, and they've been in combat, and that's a whole different story. But as far as the MMA guys, I strip that down. I tell them mentally, I teach them mentally what violence is really like. And then we start working on just the core principles, and what, the first is with the most is the best. As I use that, and I definitely, that's a Paul Vunak term, but I love it, Yeah.
Right. So you're doing like a kind of a, first you strip them down and then you teach them like concepts.
Well, yes.
I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, strategies. I teach them how to the strategies you need to make this fight more favorable for you. Does that make sense? A lot of things that I teach, Vunak used this too, and I've been known to use it, but you learn how to cheat. That's what I'm teaching. I'm teaching you how to so-called, and I'm doing the parentheses or the air quotes here, but you learn how to cheat, because the cheating is a couple things. A, he probably has he's probably never seen what you're about to do. You got to always remember that, and most of the guys have it. Most of the guys most of the people that I've been in altercation with have no clue that I can grab the back of your neck and elbow you repeatedly till you quit moving. Nobody's thought of that. And I don't understand why, but nobody's thought of it. They see Bone Jones backing the guy to the cage and doing that cute little spinning elbow that he's badass with. I get it. It's awesome. They see that, but they don't see, man, just grab this guy, hit him with 3 elbows, and then walk away. You get what I'm saying? That's it.
Right. Executed with killer
area
instinct.
Also is the mindset, killer instinct. I call it the intensity dial. You have to be able to rip that thing up and down at will, and Vu taught a lot on that. And this was a big lesson for me too. I learned very quickly. It was in my blood. My father was my first martial art instructor, and he was a hell of a street fighter and just a very respected man when it came to that side. From 3 years old, I knew about the killer instinct because they would talk. My uncles and my dad and stuff would talk about it. I started hearing the term dirty boxing in '87, and people now think that they started the term. Okay, my dad was using the term dirty or filthy or stuff back in like the '80s, and he was already talking about, like, I remember him and my uncle out there wrestling. He would grab the hair and just throw uppercuts. That's dirty boxing, right? So people think now that dirty boxing is just Filipino. No, it's in my dirty boxing program that's sold around the globe hundreds of times. And when people get it, they're like, oh, it's not just Filipino. No, I'm going to stick my thumb in your eye, hit you with an overhand. I mean, so yeah. So what was my point in this?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about how you train an MMA fighter. We had just gotten to breaking it down, and
then you got to get over the fact that they don't want to break the rules. So using the thumb, using the finger jab, elbow in the face while attached, 12 o'clock elbows while attached. They don't want to do that kind of stuff because it's taught that it's bad. Anything you see in a sport arena that is banned or that is took out of the competition, put that shit in your toolbox, because that's what is going to work. Why do you think the early UFCs were so bloody?
Right.
You don't see that. When was the last time you saw a real bloodbath in the cage? But you remember Oleg Taktarov?
They're rare now, yeah.
Oh my God, he would bleed.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
great. He's a great Sambo guy, but he would just bleed so much. You don't see none of that no more. And it was all elbows that was cutting him
Right.
open. And that's another thing when it comes to the elbows. People don't understand that they're a multi-use tool. The elbow to me is like a Swiss Army knife. I can hit with the tip and I can cut you. I can hit with the tip backwards and I can cut you. I can also hit with the bone with that 3-inch radius I told you about and knock you out. I could also do the same thing in a backward elbow and knock you out, which I've done one time in my life, and I wasn't working at a club. Should I? Sorry. So I'm going to tell it. So yeah, this guy started messing with my wife big time, and I have this thing with her that I let her handle her own business till she came. So, and don't get me wrong, my wife has knocked men out in clubs. Yeah, she's dropped. I tell people it's getting your wings. That's what I tell my combative students. Whenever you knock someone out with an elbow, you got your wings. So anyway, he was messing with her hardcore. She kept asking him to leave, kept asking him to leave. And then I just stood in between them so that he would hopefully walk away. He was, what, 6'4"? Yeah. So he just kept on. Then he put his hands on my shoulders, and I threw that back elbow and knocked him out. I'm like, damn, they're a multi-use tool. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
So so you change the competitor's mindset, then they'll be better at defending their lives and the lives of their loved ones than anyone, because they already have, hopefully, the discipline to train. That's the biggest thing you need in any kind of sport arena, is you need athletes with the discipline to train. They already have that. If they're open-minded, they can learn how to use that in a different way if they need to. You know what I mean?
If you had your choice, would you rather a guy start training in MMA and then learn the combative end of things, or
the other way around?
Learn the.
If I had my choice with every student, I would want them completely bare. 100%. Yep. Because
Okay. And you would start them with the combatives piece first, and then move them more towards sparring and competition, or how would that work?
I actually don't start them in combatives first. Unless they come to me just for combatives. Okay, if the phone would ring right now for my school, Progressive Martial Art Training Systems in Orlando, Florida, if it would ring right now, they wouldn't even know about the adaptive combatives department. Does that make sense? They wouldn't even know about it unless they found it online somewhere. But they wouldn't even know about it. Okay. They would be calling about martial art lessons. So when they come into my school, they're going to learn the Jeet Kune Do training methods. They're going to learn Magla Hook Kali, or the Filipino martial arts. They're going to learn my hybrid striking program, which is a blend between Muay Thai, Taekwondo, Savate, things like that. And they're going to have access to my submission grappling, or my submission grappling wrestling program. And that's it. That's Progressive Martial Art Training Systems. Once they get in that program, if they want to do adaptive combatives, it's easily to transfer them over where they can do both. Does that make sense?
All right. So just to make sure I'm tracking. So you start them with a kind of a what looks a little bit like the Dan Inosanto blend. You got some grappling in there, some Filipino stuff, some JKD, Muay Thai. And then once they build a combat base, if they want to, if they ask you about it, you would show them the
not just that.
Piece.
The adaptive combative programs, that's for my we train a few LEO departments. We got military groups that come in. It's not just for civilians, although it's very much for civilians too. And over the years, I started marketing that thing just for like professionals, LEO or military. But then I realized that the civilian, they need it too. So in the adaptive combatives program, you also have my women's counter assault tactics course. So we've done those all over the United States. We've done them in colleges. We've been on Fox News with that. So it's but all of that is the strictly combatives area, not the martial art. That's why I separated them. Does that make sense? In other words, I don't expect you to come to class 2 to 3 days a week in the adaptive combatives. This is kind of some of these guys come in once a month to tune up. Some of them do women's self-defense class. We try to do every other month, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And I also teach a lot of private classes with adaptive combatives. There'll be guys coming that just want to work with me and teach them the nitty gritty of it all, so to speak. And I will do that also.
You got an interesting background, and you've got this huge amount of experience to draw from. If you were going to give advice to, a kid who's thinking about going into the same fields that you went into, what would your advice be?
You mean becoming a club doorman or no? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's where you started, right?
Yeah.
So if he was like,
it's funny,
like, hey,
I get him all the time, and
I want to go into
2-3 days ago. I just got it from a guy in Tennessee who messaged me and says he's starting to do it. First thing I say is don't do it. I always say that. And the second thing I tell them is because a lot of these people that get into that, they're in the MMA, they got the tap out shirts, they got the tattoos, they feel like they would do good there. See, this is the thing about working club door work, and I learned this late. Like I said, I got addicted to the violence before I learned the point. And the point isn't the violence. The point is that a good club doorman, his job isn't to bounce anyone. It's to manage people. That's his job. The bounce is an old English term that they came up with. The bouncer is because they were throwing people out and bouncing their heads off of curbs. That's why I try not to use the term bouncer. I say club doorman. Because yes, I was a bouncer, but that's not the point. I don't like that term. It's very negative. So when some of these people don't have the attitude to be one, I will know right away, and my wife's right here. She will attest to it. I will know right away if a guy's going to be a good club doorman or a good bouncer, if you will, right away within 10 seconds of talking to me. 10 seconds. And I used to predict it. I'm like, he's going to either get hurt or hurt someone. And every time it worked out that way. Because they would incite the violence. I would have to intervene. It got the last few years, man, it got to the point where I was doing more managing dumbasses, excuse my language, than I was my job. You get what I'm saying? Because these guys were they didn't understand. Right, and I would have to have like 30 eyeballs on all of them. Because hell, we had, how many people I had? 7, 8?
7, and then 6 of them.
Yeah, 500 people in a building. You're going to have 7, 8. We should have had 10 or more, but we always had 7 at least. So it got to the point where I was making sure, like I'd look over and watch this one about to slam some 60-year-old in his head, and I'd have to go fix that issue. You get what I'm saying? Or some guy complaining that the bouncer punched him when all the bouncer needed to do was say, look, if you don't mind, I'm going to cut you off from drinking for the next hour because you look a little intoxicated, but then I'm going to buy you your first beer. If they're doing something like that, they would get violent with these people. And these people, some of these people, and I'm not just blaming them because some of the people that worked under me will probably listen to this. I'm not just blaming them, me too. Sometimes I would just pull a trigger when I should have just shook his hand and asked him to come talk to me in the corner. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, so as an example of that, let's use like the most picked on martial art of all time, because we both have experience in this. Would you say it would be better to have a background in something like Aikido to become a doorman because of the nature of the art and kind of learn to shoehorn that into real violence than starting with
I don't know if it's better, but it would be okay. But the reason why is because either one of those, if you start the striking art, you're going to need to learn the more Aikido-ish side of the game. But if you start in Aikido, you're going to need to learn the striking side of the game. So it's pretty much the same coin, different side. Does that make sense? So
yeah, I was thinking philosophically, right? Like the art of peace and blending. Maybe they bring the right psychology to the table, and that's a better place to start.
You're very right.
Somebody who's just thinking about bashing stuff.
It's the psychology of it all that no matter what art they start in. I mean, to be quite frank with you, when I trained club doorman, I'd prefer if they never had any training at all. And to be honest with you, the best club doorman that I've trained.
Interesting.
Well, I have a lot that I'm very fond of, but the best few club doormen I trained were actually college level wrestlers. They did. They adapt. They were
Oh,
great. They were. I always knew they had my back. They knew how to just grab people and just hold them and twist them or lay them down. And which you don't always want to go. I mean, most times you don't want to go to the ground, but sometimes when you got 4 bouncers on a guy, it's okay because those other people will guard you while you're subduing this person on the ground. Does that make sense? Yes.
yeah, they can move bodies. Yeah, my son wrestled. He was a
That's
good
it.
wrestler.
And that's what it's
They
about.
just move bodies.
That's another
so
thing
well.
that these young kids, these young bouncers that I used to train, they want to fight inside the club. Move him outside. You know, that was our thing. They want to fight, so everybody sees them fighting. Everybody sees them either hurt this person just drunk or get hurt, which neither one of those is a good idea, especially when people are seeing or watching it. You know, so yeah, move bodies. I like that.
All right, so this is the point where we kind of wrap up, and you plug your website and whatever other products and stuff you have out there, just to get your name and brand or whatever, and get it noticed. So go ahead and
Also,
share whatever information
guys, I'm pretty
you
easy
like
to
about
find.
that kind of stuff.
If you go to my school website, it's www.empowerusa.net. That's EMPLWERUSA.net. I also have a very awesome online training video site, guys. Progressive Productions. You'll find great video series there, guys, that we've sold in every continent. I mean, it's really great food. I'm very proud of it because I was able. This is giving me the opportunity to meet a lot of great people around the globe that I would never have met otherwise. You know, and talk to these people and have them actually give me their opinions on the videos and such. So it's been such a great thing, and we started that in 2015, I think 2014. So Progressive Productions, you can find it at www.proactionvideos.com.
If you get a chance and you're in the Orlando area, for sure, look up Guro Billy Brown. Get out there, get some real training in. And just enjoy the wealth of knowledge that this man is.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Thank you, Guru. Have a great day.